So hello, welcome to the online tutorial where we're going to be looking at using a program called GraphPad Prism. Now GraphPad Prism is a quite a powerful program. You can do loads of different analyses on it in all sorts of complicated ways. What we're going to do is just going to start looking at the more basic functions, bits and pieces, similar to Excel, in that we're going to be looking at how to draw the basic graphs and do analysis on it. The one advantage Prism has is that it's quite intuitive, it's quite helpful, and once you get to know a little bit how the program works, which isn't difficult, it's quite easy to use. Now you might have heard or used other statistics programs, things like SPSS or Minitab, if you're familiar with those. These all do similar types of analysis. It's just for the purposes of this we're looking at using GraphPad Prism, because it's quite nice and it's quite a friendly program. Depending on how the computers are set up at this moment in time, most of them you can access GraphPad Prism if you go into the Start menu, and then it's probably under GraphPad software, and GraphPad Prism 6 is the latest version. The program is only licensed to the faculty, so it's only on the student computers in MA143. It's not in the main computers, for example in the Learning Centre or MIBook, so it's not licensed to the university as a whole. However, we will put instructions up. It's fairly straightforward. As a student of the faculty, you're able to download a copy for your own personal use. You just need to use your university email address to do that, and it's a fairly straightforward process. You can download a copy to your own personal computer or laptop. There is also a Mac version which uses obviously a different installation code to the PC version, but they basically work in the same way as far as I'm aware. So GraphPad Prism then, although it's sort of similar in appearance roughly to Excel in that it sort of has a spreadsheet type look, it works in quite different ways. So with Excel you get a generic blank spreadsheet that comes up the same every time. You have to put all your data in, you can stick it anywhere, and then you tell Excel how to then treat that data. With Prism it's slightly different in that you have to put a little bit more thought in beforehand about what your data is and how it is organised, and then Prism will sort of, you can set it up accordingly depending on what your data is. And the start page when you open Prism is you get this menu, and you have different types of analysis, so you have X, Y, column, various other ones. If you're not sure what you need, some good clues are here. It's, for example, it will give you an indication of the tests that are available, and what sorts of analysis it can do. For example, column, if you've got, you're comparing columns of data, group data, multiple groups, contingencies, things like chi-squared tests. So you've got a clue there. Most common ones you'll probably be using column data and XY data for the more simple stuff anyway. The other advantage with Prism is that it has sample data on there that you can play with. So if there's a certain piece of analysis you want to do, it has sample data where you can go in. It already has that data filled out in the correct way, and it has lots of explanation on there about how to actually perform that analysis, which we're going to use to start off with. So we're going to use column data. Okay, we're not going to import our own data for the moment. We're going to use their sample data. Okay, we're going to use a sample data that's called the paired t-test data. So I'm just going to click that and go on create. Okay, so what you'll see is, as I said, it looks vaguely similar to Excel in this. You've got your spreadsheet layout, you've got your toolbar along the top. One thing we do have is this initial bar down the left hand side. It's already populated it with our sample data. Okay, there's not a lot there, but it just gives us an idea of how it works. And we also have this sort of yellow floating box here that gives a bit of an idea about what the data is and how it's organised. So this is one of the helpful things, because Prism is very big on and useful on explaining things, unlike a lot of the other programs which don't have so much functionality in that way. In terms of the organisation and how it is, with Prism you need to stick the data in the right place. That's quite important. So the main part of the spreadsheet, you should only have numbers in. Okay, so these boxes should only have your actual raw data in. Any other text for your column or row headings needs to go at the top here, where we've got our control and treated, so we need to put our column headings there, and our row headings, if you have any, go down the left hand side here. So you shouldn't be putting text in these fields. Other than that, you've got your main toolbar here. Most of this, unless you're faffing with the more fancy stuff, you won't necessarily need. There's a few key bits on here, and I'll explain this left-hand toolbar shortly. One thing here, if you're not sure again about what you're doing, how it works, you get links here for step-by-step instructions. Okay, so if you click on that, you'll need to be connected to a internet connection. It will open up the GraphPad website for you. Just being a bit slow. For some reason some of those pictures aren't working. But it gives you lots of information on here. Okay, GraphPad Prism website is really good, very helpful. Okay, we're going to go back to this. In terms of the functionality and the things we can do, the main button that we want on this top toolbar is the Analyze button. Okay, with our Analyze button, if we click this is where we get the access, funnily enough, to all the analysis. The first one we're going to try is column statistics. Now, column statistics is where we access our descriptive statistics. Some of these are ticked for default already. Some of these more complicated ones are not. Okay, I'm not going to change any of these apart from this one here. Okay, so this is our statistical test for normality. So this is where it says tested values come from a Gaussian distribution. This is our normal distribution. Okay, if we tick that, we'll show you what that means in a second. The others that are pre-selected, the main ones we want, so we've got descriptive statistics, so we've got our mean, standard deviation, standard error. We don't need to check anything else in a minute. So I shall go OK, and what we'll do, we'll bring up this additional screen, okay, where we have for each column of data our descriptive statistics. So the main ones here, we've got mean, standard deviation, and then standard error, which is the one that Prism tends to use, whereas Excel is a bit more tricky. So for each column of data, it will give you that information. It will also give you information on medians, percentiles, things like that. We also have confidence intervals. So these are similar in a way to the reference ranges and how they're calculated. I'll be wary of taking these as read, because off the top of my head I think Prism uses standard error rather than standard deviation to calculate confidence intervals. The other section here was our D'Agostino and Pearson test, which is testing for normal distribution. Now here it says n too small, which basically means because there was very few data points in our original data, there isn't enough numbers to actually perform that test properly. Usually it would be, I'm not sure what the minimum number is, but if it is, what you would get, you would get your p-value summary, and you would get basically a yes/no answer as to whether it thought it was normally distributed or not. As I mentioned, this additional column on the left here, we can switch between the different sheets basically. So we've got your raw data here, you've got your results sheet here, and you've got your graphs, which we're going to look at in a second. One additional thing you will see when you go to your results sheets is you get an additional button on your toolbar, which is the interpret button, and this is quite useful. If you click on that, again it will open up the Prism website, Let's maximise that. And it gives you an explanation of what everything on there is. So if you're not sure, for example, what the confidence interval is, some of the more complex things like skewness or kurtosis, if you're interested in that. Gives you a bit of an idea of what all those are. So that's quite a useful feature. The other thing Prism does very well, it will draw you very nice graphs. You can see here again on this left hand menu, if we click in the graph section. Now, because I haven't asked it to draw a graph yet, it's just asking which type I would like to draw. It's very easy to draw multiple graphs. We can scroll through, there's a big list of the available graphs. To start with, what I'm just going to do is just do a standard column graph. Here again you've got an option, you can choose what you want to plot on your graph. So the default here is mean as the bar and standard deviation as the error bar. Okay, so you can have standard error as your error bar, or you can have standard deviation as your error bar. It gives you a little preview in this box here. That'll give you a basic preview. Just click OK, and it's drawn your graph, which is a lot easier than like faffing you have to do in Excel. The headings for each bar, it's taken from your raw data sheet, so you can control and treat it. So if you want to change those, you will need to change that on your raw data sheet. You've got titles there, you can get rid of them or keep them, or you can just overtype and pick an axis title from there. And again, it will automatically label those up with what your data is if you need to. At the moment it's looking fairly drab. It's not difficult to format these graphs and make them look a little more pretty. Most of that, if you right click over a bar, you can format an individual bar or data set, and you can change, if you want to, what the different colours are. You can have different patterns on there. It's fairly straightforward to do that. So in this case you can play around with your arts content. So that's a column graph. Other types of graphs you can draw, if you want to draw additional ones, if you go to this little drop down here, it says new, that's probably the main one you're going to use. And if you go to new graph of existing data, okay, so you can draw additional graphs. Again, it will come up with this little selection bar, and you can choose which graph you want. The other one that we're going to select is, whatever is on there, we're going to go for our box plot, or our box and whiskers plot as it's called. Again, you can change exactly what you want it to show. You can do all sorts of complicated things. Min to max, which is the default one, is fine. I'm just going to click OK. So again, what you'll see is it's drawn our additional graph here. So this is our box and whiskers plot, works in exactly the same way. If you remember your box and whiskers plot, the different bits to interpret there is, it's slightly difficult to see on this example. It's not a great box plot because you've got very few values on there, so it's slightly difficult to tell what's what. But your top and bottom whiskers, as they're called, are your minimum and maximum. The box in the middle is the middle 50%, and then the bar across is a median. Again, it will draw each one of these for each column of data. So if you have 5 columns of data, you'll get 5 boxes. Basically, again, refresher, what you're looking for is the symmetry. Okay. Now these, even though the box takes up the vast majority of the room, and you can't really see the whiskers particularly well, both of those are fairly okay. You'll be able to proceed with a parametric test on that, I think. And again, you can go in the same way and format those bars if you want to. That's fairly straightforward. In terms of the analysis then, so I'm going to go back to our raw data. The other analysis we can do with things like our t-tests. And again, we're going to be using the Analyze button for that. So it's a case of just going analyse, picking your t-tests, clicking OK. Now the first box that jumps up when we ask it to do a t-test is we've got our choices. Our first choice, if you remember, we're talking about paired or unpaired. Okay. If we remember the difference between the two, paired, we've got the same subject group but different experimental conditions. For this we've got a paired test. So what we're looking at is we've got a control and treated group. Okay, so we've got two groups of subjects, same experimental conditions. Okay, so it's a paired test. The other choices on here, if we wish to, here we're looking at a parametric test with a t-test. If you don't think your data satisfies that normally distributed assumption, you can use a non-parametric one. In this case, it will suggest which one to use, which is a Wilcoxon test. But we're okay. We're going to choose our parametric test and click OK. And it will automatically assume, I think it does a two-tail distribution automatically. We've got a load of difference on here, various bits and pieces. The main thing here is this section which says paired t-test. It will give you your p-value and your p-value summary. Okay, so your p-value is 0.016, which is less than our significant level of 0.05, and it says yes. It gives you a yes no answer if your data is statistically significant. Okay, don't get this p-value confused, because there are other p-values here which look at the effectiveness of the pairing and things like that. Okay, which is something slightly more complicated. Again, if you're not sure, you've got your interpret button here, and a second. Again, that will bring up various bits of help if you're not sure. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward to use. With these outputs, once you've got your graphs or your selections, if you want to then take these out of Prism and insert them into another piece of work, so for example your statistics report where you're using this for a lab report or something like that, and you want it to take the graphs, that is fairly straightforward. It's just a case of right-clicking over a graph, copy, go into a Word document, for example, and it will paste that directly into a Word document. So you don't have to do screen grabs or anything like that. You can copy and paste it directly into a Word document. Okay. And that's the same, again, you can do that for selected pieces. So if you wanted to take your t-test values or something like that for whatever reason, you can copy and paste selected bits of your result sheet, and again you can paste those just directly in. One thing worth remembering, when you're saving these, it will obviously save them as a Prism file, which means that you're only opening them again on a computer that has Prism. Okay, so please bear that in mind. Again, all the university computers do not have this program. So that's the column data that we're looking at. The other data we can look at is things like your correlation data or your XY data. What we're going to do for that is we're just going to borrow these numbers. Okay, so I'm just going to copy those. You can close this down if you want to and open up a new one, or we can just open up multiple sheets. So if I go to our new tab again and go to new data table plus graph, it will bring up this front option sheet again, and we're going to go XY data. Most of these, if we've just got two columns of data, we're comparing one against the other, we're going to choose enter and plot a single Y value for each point. That's fine. You can, if you've calculated things elsewhere, you can, if you've just got mean, standard deviation, whatever you've calculated from Excel, you can dump it and use that sort of option. If you're not sure, just have a play with it, would be my suggestion. And again, you've got all the sample data telling you about correlation, regression, things like that. So I'm just going to go create. So here we've got our blank data page. So this is what it looks like when you come in. So you can just take your data, type it in, or copy and paste it from Excel or whatever source you have. Again, just make sure your column headings are filled in appropriately. So here you've got your X and your Y data. So I'm just going to paste these in. Here it's not direct paste, you have to go paste data. So we've got our data here. I'm just going to take the sub-column headings as well and use those for our X and Y. So I'm going to paste the column headings so it's labelled. Okay, so our column heading is going to be our control, and that's going to be our X data, and our Y data will be our treated, for example. Again, it's fairly straightforward, so if you just go into your graphs, it will ask you what sort of graph you wish to draw, and that's going to be just a little scatter plot like that. Okay. Click OK. In the same way, you've got your axes labelled because we put the column headings on there. Here it's just got data 2 as a title, so we can get a title, but you can type one over there. And it will just give you a scatter of your data points. Again, if you want to format your data points, that's fairly straightforward to do. Just right click and you can change all of them, or single ones, whatever, if you wanted. Change the symbol size, the symbol shape, if you want to draw crosses or whatever. That's all fairly straightforward to do. If you want to put a line of best fit on there, the process is what's called linear regression. So again, if you go to your raw data and go to the analyze box again, here it will make a bit of a guess about what you want to do, and it's chosen linear regression, which is actually what we want. Just going to click that. There's various options on there. If you're not sure, okay, again, most of these things you've got a learn button, which will open up the Prism website. So here it will take you straight forward to the linear regression, and you can go through that, so it tells you what linear regression is, explains the equation of the line, things like that. And you can click through all those, it tells you how it works. Again, so that's got lots of really useful background information if you're not sure what the data represents or how to interpret the data. That's a really good resource. We don't need to choose any of these other tick boxes or anything like that, so I'm just going to click OK. If we go back to our graph a second, what we will see is put your line of best fit on there. So that's fairly straightforward. If we go back to our results, you've got loads of various other bits and pieces. Again, if you're not sure what these are, use your interpret button. Most of these you won't necessarily need at a basic level. Similar to Excel, what you get is you get your R square value. So it will tell you how close to a straight line your points are, which is fairly low in this case because your data points are pretty straight out. We've got a few of them. We also have things like test to see if the slope is significantly different from 0. Again, look at that and explore if you want to know about that sort of thing. The other thing we have is the equation of the line, which is useful for our linear regression, which I talked about in the other one, where we can use one value to predict another or rearrange the equation to get it the same way, and this gives it that y equals mx plus c format. And again, if you wish to, you can copy and paste these outputs into sort of Word or anything else that you wish to.